Hello students, in this session I am going to link the explanation to one important aspect of the achievement test. By now, you all are familiar with the concept and preparation of an achievement test. Now, if you remember the blueprints, the number of units, marks, instructional objectives were included in the blueprints I showed in the previous presentation. However, you will find that the types of questions were not included in the blueprint, though I mentioned that essay type questions, short answer type, and even objective type questions are included in the achievement test. So in this session, I'll be discussing on the different types of questions. I'll first consider the essay type questions. Now, according to John M. Stolnaker, 1951, an essay type test or an essay type item has been described as, I quote, a test item which requires a response composed by the examinee, usually in the form of one or more sentences of a nature that no single response or pattern of responses can be listed as correct, and the accuracy and quality of which can be judged subjectively only by one skilled or informed in the subject. So, on the basis of Stolnaker's definition, an essay type question should meet certain criteria. Firstly, it requires examinees to compose rather than select their answers, which means that examinees or students taking the test should write the answers rather than ticking, or selecting the correct answer. Then, secondly, it should elicit student responses, and that response must consist of more than one sentence. Thirdly, essay type items allows different or original responses or pattern of responses, which means that there is no fixed response to an essay type item. And finally, essay type item requires subjective judgment by a competent specialist or subject expert to judge the accuracy and quality of responses. Now, with regards to the preparation of essay type items or questions, first of all, due consideration should be given to the representation of topics. So, while preparing the essay type question, as far as possible, the test constructor has to ensure that the questions are framed from topics that offers the possibility of asking high order questions in order to measure higher cognitive skills such as application, then analysis, synthesis, and even evaluation of concepts taught and covered in classroom teaching and learning. Secondly, the questions are to be framed correctly, avoiding the usage of ambiguous terms, and vocabulary should be within the understanding level of students. Further, the number of expected words may also be informed to the test takers or examinees. Like for example, answer the question in 500 words or in 1000 words or even 2000 words, right? I move on now to the advantages and limitations of the essay type items. Now, in order to use essay type items effectively, it is important to understand the advantages and limitations of essay type items. Without understanding them, educators may use an essay type item when another item type would be more appropriate. Okay, or sometimes educators may even grossly underestimate what would be required to effectively use essay questions. Okay, so some of the advantages are: firstly, essay type items assess higher order or critical thinking skills. Now, essay questions provide an effective way of assessing complex learning outcomes that cannot be effectively assessed by other commonly used paper and pencil assessment procedure like the objective test. Okay, now in fact some of the most complicated thinking processes can only be assessed through essay questions. When a paper and pencil test is necessary, for example assessing students ability to make judgments that are well thought through and that involves justification, can only be asked or can only be assessed through essay type items. Secondly, essay type items provide room for evaluation of students' thinking and reasoning ability. Essay type questions often require students to demonstrate their reasoning and thinking skills, which gives the teacher the opportunity to detect problems that students may have with their reasoning processes. So, when educators or teachers detect such problems in students' thinking, they can help them overcome those problems. Now, thirdly, an essay type item provides students the opportunity to link responses to authentic experience. It is usually found that constructed responses are closer to real life experiences than selected responses. Now here selected responses means those responses which are given in the form of options. Now, since problem solving and decision making are considered as vital life competencies, therefore in most cases these skills requires the ability to construct a solution or decision rather than select a solution from the limited set of possibilities provided in the question paper. Okay, so essay type items, in spite of the advantages, are not free from limitations. Okay, so let us consider the limitations. First of all, essay type items assess a limited sample of the range of content, which means that it can consider only a limited amount or limited number of topics. Due to the time it takes for students to respond to essay questions and for graders or evaluators to score responses, the necessity testing a limited sample or the necessity of testing a limited sample of the subject matter gains importance. Okay, thus essay questions necessitate testing a limited sample of the subject matter, thereby reducing content validity. So usually you will find that with essay type items, only 4 questions may be sufficient for say an 80 marks paper. But with the inclusion of short answer type questions, 20 questions may be included, and this will help in covering a wide range of content than a test of 3 to 4 essay type questions. Now, the second limitation is that essay type items are difficult and time consuming to grade. Answers to essay questions are likely to be graded less reliably than other types of tests. Questions and take considerable time to grade. One of the advantages of essay questions is that they allow students some latitude in formulating their responses. Alright, there is freedom on the part of the students to write their responses. However, this advantage comes at the cost of the time spent in scoring and in establishing reliability in scoring. Different readers may vary in their grading of the same or similar response. Okay? And therefore, one reader may grade differently from the other reader even though the response is similar or even the same. Therefore, essay answers of similar quality may receive notably different scores. Okay, and the reason for this are varied. Okay, sometimes it is because of gender and ethnic bias. Then the length and legibility of the response may also be the factors in the difference in grading. Okay, another limitation of the essay type item is that it encourages practice in poor or unpolished writing. Now, this is so because the way in which students construct the responses to essay questions, is different from smooth or say real world writing task, okay, or from everyday writing task. You must have experienced when you write or when you attempt an essay type question in the test or examination, you write hurriedly, isn't it? And you include everything that comes into your mind without actually, bothering about the grammatical errors, spelling, so on and so forth. Okay? So at times, the practice that essay test gives in writing may be practiced in bad writing. Okay, all right, which is often found to be hasty, ill-considered, and unpolished. Okay, you must have heard the saying, isn't it, which says, "Practice makes a man perfect." But if it is a wrong practice, then how does it end up in bringing perfection? So it should be perfect practice will make a man perfect. Okay? Alright. So it is, with regards to this, it may be mentioned that perfect practice will help in, students gain the good practice of writing in the correct manner. Okay? Alright. And in this way, it will discourage unpolished writing. So this is one of the major limitation of essay type items. So I move on now to the second type of the questions, that is the short answer type. Short answer type items are items that represent questions which needs a short reply or a limited reply in which the number of words is limited, say limit to 100 or 200 words. These items are also restricted in their scope by delimitation and specification in the question itself, in the format of the question itself. Like for example, the question may say, give 3 examples of this, give 3 examples of that, or maybe provide the most suitable reason, or give 2 causes of this, okay, of the war, so on and so forth. Give 2 causes of environmental pollution. Okay, all right. So which means that in the question itself, the limitation is there. Okay. So these short answer type questions has certain advantages. First of all, short answer items are easy to construct. Then they require students to supply the answer very briefly, which means that it does not take too much of the time of the students in responding to the questions. Then another advantage is that a substantial number of items can be incorporated in the test, covering a wider range of topics. Okay. Now, coming to the limitations, short answer items are usually restricted to measuring lower cognitive skills. Okay. Then, short answer items are most likely to be scored erroneously than objective test. Now, in the objective test, you will learn later on that scoring key are always provided, but in terms of short answer type items, scoring keys are not provided, and it also depends on the subjectivity of the evaluator. So another limitation of the short answer type item is that short answer items require more time to score. Okay, they are similar to the essay type item, whereby the evaluator will have to spend time to evaluate or to correct the responses. Then till date, fewer computerized procedures have been developed for processing responses to short answer type items. So which means that scoring to short answer type test items still has to be done manually. Okay, so we move on now to the third type, that is the objective type questions. Now, objective type questions are generally tests which include questions or items that require pupils to provide very short answers or direct answers. Sometimes they can even be, provided in the form of a single word answer. Now, when it comes to the objective type questions, there are two types of objective type answers. Okay. The first kind is the test which is based on recall, and the second type is based on recognition. Now, again, the test based on recall is again of two types. Okay, namely the simple recall type, and the other is the completion type. Now, a simple recall type test involves limiting the answer to one word only, or one phrase also at times. Now, various types of objective type tests based on recall are there. These include the test which is given in question form, a test which is given in statement form, and also where stimulus words are being used. Okay, all right. Now, when it comes to preparation of the test, certain things are to be kept in mind while preparing the test. Okay, so while framing the test item, care must be taken to frame questions in such a way that the answer is short and definite, if possible a single word. Then if the question say ask for students to supply the answer, then the space for writing the answer should be provided appropriately. Again, for testing understanding, questions and statements should be expressed in language as far as possible, okay, different from that used in the textbook. Okay, and another important thing to be noted is that a scoring key should always be prepared. Okay, all right. Now, some of the benefits of the simple recall test is that it involves only recall. Okay. Then another advantage is that it reduces the process or the chance of guessing. Okay, because a student will have to recall, since there are no options provided, a student will have to recall the answer and provide the response. So which means that in the process, these types of tests prevents bluffing or beating and writing about the bush, as in the case of the essay type items. Okay, all right. Now the second category under the test based on recall is the completion test. Now this test consists of a sentence or a paragraph from which one or more words or phrase are omitted. This type of test is commonly called the fill in the blanks, isn't it? Most of you have, attempted these kinds of tests. Alright? Now again, while preparing these fill in the blanks or completion type test, use of direct phrases again from the book should be avoided. Ambiguities also should be avoided. And then, as in the case of the recall type, since the student has to supply the answer, so the blank space should be provided appropriately. Okay, so we move on to the second category of the objective type test based on recognition. We have just completed the objective type test based on recall, which means the students will have to recall or to remember. Now I shall explain to you the types of tests which is based on recognition. Okay, which means that the students will just have to recognize or to identify the correct response. So these tests are the tests based on the capacity of the individual to recognize the correct answer. So these tests include the common forms such as the multiple choice types, the alternate response type, and the matching test. Alright, so multiple choice test you all know. Now in such tests, many answers or responses are given in the form of options where pupils or examinees are required to pick up the correct answer. Now these types of tests can be used in testing for information, and then for assessing students' understanding of concepts, and maybe students' ability to discriminate between concepts. Alright. The second category under the objective type test based on recognition is the alternative response type. So under the alternative response type, items in this category may be written in different forms. Alright, so from the term alternative, you can understand that there has to be two options. Alright, okay, so the different types of alternative response type are the yes no type, then the true false type, right wrong type, correct incorrect type. Alright, and mostly they are given in the form of two options or two multiple choice type. Alright, so while preparing these alternative response tests, it has to be taken care that equal number of true or false statements may be included. Okay, then it has to be ensured that the statement is definitely true or false. And then the statements that are used in the form of questions are to be short and specific. Alright? Okay. Moving on now to the third category under the objective type test based on recognition is the matching type test. Matching items are used to measure the ability of students to associate events and dates, or events and persons, then terms and definitions, so on and so forth, which means that usually in the matching type test, the relationship is always there. Okay, all right. So to types of matching test can be constructed. The first type is called the completion matching, whereby one column will be same as the beginning of the statement, and then in the second column students will have to find the correct option to fill in the blank. Okay, all right. So which means that the sentences are presented in the form of a list for which a student will have to choose and match the correct word that will complete the sentence. Okay, now in the case of the completion matching test, sometimes more than one options are also given. Okay, so the second type of matching type test is called the column matching. This is the most popular matching type test. In this procedure, two columns of statements are placed side by side but randomly, and the pupils or examinees are required to match with the numbers or letters on the other side. You must have all attempted this matching type test. Okay, is that clear? All right. Then there can also be another type of test, that is the time sequence type option. Okay, over here a student may be asked to match or to provide the sequential order for events or happenings. It can also involve arranging in the correct order. Okay, these are also form of matching type. So students, from today's session you have learned about I hope you have learned about the different types of questions that can be included in the achievement test, and these type of questions included the essay type items, the short answer type items, and the objective type items. So with this I wrap up today's session, and again I press upon you to subscribe to my channel for more updates on evaluation in the educational setup. Thank you.